How would you like to improve your health and keep your family safe? You're listening to the Healthy Home Hacks Podcast, where we firmly believe enjoying optimal health shouldn't be a luxury. Healthy Home Authorities and husband and wife team Ron and Lisa will help you create a home environment that will level up your health. It's time to hear from the experts. Listen in on honest conversations and gain the best tips and advice. If you're ready to dive in and improve your well-being and increase your energy, you're in the right place. All right, here are your hosts, bowel biologists, authors, media darlings, vicarious vegans, and avocado aficionados, Ron and Lisa Barris.
Our homes are sick. Up to 50% of homes today have toxic conditions. A building that is making you sick is a building that is sick. Someone who knows this firsthand is our guest today. He spent 15 years as an international songwriter, producer, and DJ. However, this episode has nothing to do with mixing, spinning, dancing, or singing. Rather, Seth Jones' journey took a dramatic turn after a personal encounter with something called building-related illness, BRI. You may or may not have heard of this, or perhaps you're familiar with sick building syndrome.
Today, Seth is dedicated to healing the estimated 66 million US homes that contribute to toxic conditions, affecting 170 million people. Seth's mission is clear: to elevate our health by purifying the environments we live in. Seth Jones is the CEO of Hygia Living Corp, a holistic building service company with your health as the priority, where he and his team developed Superstratum. Sounds like the next superhero. We're going to get into that. The first patent-pending process to remove mycotoxins from homes. His work has focused on understanding the hidden causes of building-related illness and developing products and solutions to address these issues.
Today, the Hygia Living mission to heal our homes has never been more important. Seth believes that our health can only rise to the level of our environment, and that a pure, toxin-free environment is essential for healing the body, mind, and soul. We couldn't agree more. Welcome to the show, Seth. Yes.
Wow. What an intro. I feel like you just need to follow me around, and that needs to be the intro.
Just be your paparazzi.
Exactly.
We could just be your paparazzi.
Yeah, telling people who I am.
Right. Well, Seth, I had
This
to
is
step
Seth. Have you
it up.
met Seth?
Exactly. We had to step it up. Like, Seth has all the gear. He has the headset, the magic mic. He is like so pro, right?
Well, yeah, I used to work in big studios and have all sorts of gear, and now I got my mic and my headphones.
Yeah, that part stayed with you. Well, we are excited to have you, Seth. I love this topic, mycotoxins. It is something we've talked about quite a bit on the show because we've covered mold, and we have so many listeners who think they might have mold or are dealing with mold or dealing with mold-related illness, symptoms, whatever. So I really want to dive in and just get started. So tell us a little bit about your story. How did you go from lively nightclubs to beakers and laboratories?
Wild turn of events. I never saw that one, but it's been, many years doing music. I lived in Nashville, Tennessee, and then I moved to Los Angeles, where I lived, and I had a business partner, and we were working on a couple little companies on the side. And we met someone who had this unique chemical formula, and we knew a little bit about mold. We knew that some people were really sick from it because we had some friends who couldn't get better. And this product had a really unique ability to prevent mold, even if it got wet. So you could spray it on a surface and it could last for years, like up to 20 years inside of a home. And, there would be no mold growth on that coating. And it was invisible and water resistant. So we saw this and we said, oh, well, here's a fantastic product that would actually prevent mold completely if you just sprayed it when you built your home. And that kind of began, what was a naive entry into this problem, because at that time, there wasn't really any awareness about mycotoxins within the mold remediation and indoor air quality space. We had come from the medical side. So we knew, everybody's got these toxins in them. And the assumption was that the exposure was coming through food. And you certainly can get exposure to mycotoxins from food. But when we moved into the remediation space, our team was chemists, which is a little bit different when you're in mold remediation because you're typically working with microbiology. But as we began to study the chemical effects of mold in a building, we realized that, well, mold is emitting these mycotoxins and that they're getting into the air. And so the actual exposure is through the inhalation. And when someone asked me the other day how I got into this, and I said a little bit backwards because I was doing music and we started to work on this product. We thought that we could sell it. We thought what we had was a cleaning product. And I was still DJing, and doing that full time. But we were living in a house in Los Angeles that was a big kind of startup house. And so there was a couple of there was an apartment in the back and a house in the front. And I was in a relationship at the time, and my partner was spending a lot of time in this house. And what wound up happening was, which is true in a lot of places in Los Angeles, it doesn't rain very often, but it does rain in January and you get a big rain. And when that happens, everything leaks. And all the landlords call their handyman and they come over and they paint over it and they don't have to worry about it until next January.
Throw some bleach on it and fresh coat of paint and they think they're good to go.
Exactly. And so what that does, those conditions aggravate the toxin blooms of these indoor molds and they create mycotoxins. And so this house had become a toxic house because that had happened over and over. And everyone who lived in the house suffered pretty extreme chronic illness, really terrible gut issues. The mental health problems were very severe. One girl wound up in substance abuse treatment.
Wow.
My partner actually had a very, very difficult time. What started as dissociation turned into like paranoid delusions, and she became convinced that I was going to kill her.
Whoa. Oh, that's crazy.
Oh, yeah. And since then, I've seen many other cases of mental illness and neurological disorders and these types of things.
Depression. I know depression.
Depression. Yeah. For me, it was anxiety. And that became my story because I realized what I thought, I started calling psychiatrists because I couldn't focus and finish music. And then I said, why, and I got an Adderall prescription, right? And I just thought, oh, I've got writer's block or I'm stressed because of work. What I didn't realize was that was toxicity in my brain. Because as you breathe in the air with mycotoxins, they get into your nasal cavities and they cross the blood-brain barrier.
So interesting you say that. We did a whole episode on Adderall, and actually a friend, someone we knew who got addicted unwittingly, was told it wasn't addictive and then became a raging addict, right? And then we had another doctor on who talked about, a lot of teens right now are dealing with behavioral disorders, attention issues. Yeah. And she talks about the fungus in the nasal cavity going up into the brain being.
Absolutely. And the fungus, when it colonizes the nasal cavity, it will create mycotoxins. So you start to get double exposure when you're in a building that has both mold and the toxins.
Wow.
But what we realized was in these homes, in mold remediation, the mold remediator would come in, remediate the mold, test for the mold and say, there's no more mold. But what they didn't realize is those toxins had spread around the home. And as they were killing the mold, what do you think the mold was doing? It was fighting back, right? It's releasing its poison that it makes to defend itself. So this was the reason why so many people get sick. They get mold remediation done. They have successful mold remediation done and they go back into the home and they don't feel better. And sometimes they feel worse. And I have seen cases where people have committed suicide going back into that home because they actually go crazy.
And then it's the public sort of shaming of what's wrong with you? Why are you always sick, right?
Exactly. Building-related illness is very complex and confusing because building-related illness means any disease that's caused by a contaminant in that building. Well, contaminants interact with us individually very differently. And a big factor in that is our genetics, right? So MTHFR mutations, these HLA-DR, these mutations in our genes that some estimates say, 40% of people have. You can have a marriage, a husband and a wife, and women are disproportionately affected by BRI for a few reasons.
Yes.
But you can have a woman, right, who's got an MTHFR mutation who's staying in the home more. And the husband could really just feel fine. And her hair could be falling out.
That's kind of our story. Sort of. Ron and I were engaged and I moved into a sick building home, not a building, a home, a sick home. And everything was new in this case, not mold, but it was just all the VOCs and all of the chemicals permeating. And I was working there. And I got really, really sick really fast after moving in there. And Ron, was partially living there. We were engaged and you didn't have any symptoms.
I really didn't, but it only takes 20% of the home.
But you also weren't there as much as me. I mean, I was working, everything in there. So
for sure.
The new buildings are actually the worst because they're so tight. They're so airtight.
Wow.
And the newly remodeled are worse because of all those VOCs and the formaldehyde and the flame retardants and vinyl, the cabinets, all of it. So yeah,
Absolutely.
we've got a lot of sick buildings out there.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. Seth, how can someone listening identify if they have a building related illness? How can they tell the difference?
Yeah, so there are a few ways. One way we've created is a quiz. So if they go to www.sickquiz.com, it's a really simple, quick building related illness quiz that they can take. And they'll get a score and you can kind of get a general idea, because what you're trying to do when you're identifying building related illness is it's less about identifying the illness, right? It's about identifying the cause, what it's connected to in your environment. So that's a great way to do that quiz. But in terms of what they can do right now to try and figure out if they have it, there's one really simple way that I tell people. When you go on vacation and you leave your house, do you feel good?
Well, we all do stuff.
Well, that's what everybody thinks, right? And then when you come back, do you start to feel tired again? Does your skin flare up? That right there, the correlation of any type of symptom, how you feel in your mind, how you feel in your body, to the time you spend in your building, that means that there's a 99% chance that it's something in that building that's causing that.
Yeah. And I've also heard the stat that if 25%, or it only takes 25% of the occupants to be sick for that to be a sick building, actually. So even if you're in an office space and you're noticing like, why is a lot of people getting colds all the time and getting sick and sinus issues and fatigue and headaches and all of that.
Yep.
You got to look at the building. And of course, nobody does. Nobody looks at the space.
Why am I so anxious all the time? Why do I feel depressed? Yeah.
And that stuff's never connected. People
brain
don't
fog.
think the emotions. Yeah. Brain fog, right?
Brain fog is huge.
Huge. Yeah. So going back to what you said earlier, when the remediation company comes in and they remove all the mold and then they test and tell the client, okay, well, you're good to go. Are they not testing for the mycotoxins? Where's the gap in there?
They're not.
They're not testing for the mycotoxins.
There has been no testing. And this is what we realized when we set out and started this company. We said, well, wait, the Department of Defense controls the controls of these chemicals because they're so deadly. They're heavily regulated in our food. You can Google any autoimmune disease and mycotoxin and find research about cancer and all the things that they cause. But it was crickets when it came to our indoor air. Mm-hmm. And there, at that time, were no testing options for the air. And there was a couple surface tests, but there was a big gap between the medical community that saw it happening and the indoor air and the remediation, right? They just didn't see it. Well, a couple of companies started to show up and try and create some testing devices. And there was enough validation where, and we were part of that. We did some early research as well, but within the industry, there was enough validation where everyone started to kind of turn and go, oh, this I think is a bigger issue than we thought. But then the question became, how do you solve it? Because this is a particularly difficult environmental issue to solve, because mold, for instance, even bacteria, you can kill those. You can spray them with peroxide or peracetic
vinegar,
acid.
Soapy water, right?
Exactly.
Even soapy water.
You can scrape it off and put it in a bag and take it outside. But chemicals are different. You can't kill them. And whereas a mold spore, you can about 3 microns in size, you can get down to, well, a filter can catch that. But nanoparticles, nanometer chemicals can't be filtered out. There are no traditional chemicals that will break them down. So they stay, it's like spilling gas in your home. It's sticky, it gets on all the surfaces, on the dust. So it doesn't leave the building, and it will stay for years after the mold is gone.
The mycotoxins we're talking about.
The mycotoxins will, right.
And what does the mycotoxin need to survive? Like, we know what mold needs.
Well, it's not alive, so it doesn't need anything to survive.
It can just exist. That's why you're saying for 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a rock sitting in your house. It'll break down. It's oxidation that breaks down that chemical. They're very, very resilient, right? Because mold makes them to kill bacteria. So it's like a missile that it makes. So it's a weapon. It's very difficult to destroy.
Yeah.
And this was actually, we released a white paper. We spent about 2.5 years developing a solution for this.
Wow.
And in our white paper, and one of the main mycotoxin labs we worked with, we demonstrated that our building cleaner could destroy these chemicals in a home. So that was a big victory. And it really kind of set us on the path to say, you know what, this is the problem that we're going to solve. There's a whole other thing that needs to happen in a home to purify it after mold remediation.
After mold, yeah. And then we're not even talking about it in these mycotoxins in your body. Yeah. Like a lot of people in a mold situation, remediate, they think they're good to go. And then they're not thinking about what you're talking about, but also the mycotoxins in their body. So we have some resources on that with some really great labs that you can DIY, from home, I think, right? Can't you? Maybe you have to go get your blood test. But anyway, test you can order without going through your doctor is my point. And find out your mycotoxin level and what types, right? Because there's all different types of mycotoxins. Do you know how many mycotoxins exist?
Well, there are a lot of different types of mycotoxins. There are a few that these molds make: ochratoxin, aflatoxin, trichothecenes. These are kind of the main ones that you find
Yeah.
in.
Isn't aflatoxin in peanuts?
It is because they store peanuts in silos, and so fungus and mold grows, and you get aflatoxin.
Yeah. Is that
That
really?
is so nutty.
There's the comedic relief.
Right.
It is nutty. I stopped eating peanuts after I found that out because who wants to be ingesting fungus like willingly?
Yeah, well, coffee and beans and
Coffee. Yes. Coffee is
those are the
very,
things.
yeah, that's important to get mold free coffee. We now buy mold free coffee, right? It's crazy. This is a big rabbit hole. I'm so glad you're here, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
needs so much attention. So, how do modern buildings today, you kind of alluded to that, lead to building related illness? We're talking about the tightly sealed, green, energy efficient, that's keeping everything in.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly why. After the energy crisis in the 70s, we began to learn that, okay, we need to seal up buildings because we're
Yeah.
losing a lot of air. So we began to do that. And that began to bring our energy costs down. But there was a hidden effect of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we're trapping our air in, we're creating microclimates, which is what allows, a home like mine in Los Angeles in the desert to become a toxic building. It's not because mold's growing in that desert climate, but because there's a microclimate that was created.
I didn't realize you're here. You're local people. You're a neighbor. You're in LA?
Well, I was for 10 years. Now I'm back in Nashville. But
Oh,
you
you're
are.
in
Okay.
Nashville.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yep. But LA is.
Everyone's moving to Nashville.
I know I'll be in LA next month. I'm back and forth all the time.
You are? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
looking for a DJ for an upcoming event. So do you still DJ? Do you
Well.
still DJ?
So, it's funny enough. I told everybody I retired when I started the company because obviously I had to focus.
Right.
And then when I moved to Nashville, there's a pretty lively electronic scene here now and some clubs. And they started calling me. And next thing I know, I've got more shows here in Nashville than I ever did because they just call me every weekend. So that's true.
Really? Good for
So
you.
it's just fun. It's fun now.
It's
See, all
your
that
free
good
hobby.
karma.
You gotta balance all that,
Yeah. That's
all
where I can
that
just turn off and go back to my old
mold
life
with-
for a night. Exactly. Just dance.
Seth, it kind of goes without saying, but why is detoxifying our home so important today?
It's a great question. The reason is that our environment is what creates our health. And that's true on every level, as within, so without, as above, so below. And
Right.
I like to tell people, a lot of people don't realize, this is why different religions have these ritual laws, rules about cleaning, because they realized if you don't keep your environment clean, then your vessel, your temple, these toxins and molds and things, they come in and they take over. Right. And so it's really, our health is what we provide with Superstratum and our different services is triage, right? For buildings, for sick buildings. But health in a building and health and wellness is really a lifestyle,
Mhm.
right? It's about, how you maintain your environment, and it's about autonomy and understanding all the institutional narratives that are telling you all the different stories about your health and your building. And, it takes doing your own research and taking responsibility, all of those things. So, keeping a clean environment. I'm a bachelor, right? These aren't things that typically I would be thinking about, but I had an experience that was the most difficult thing I ever went through because I was living in an environment unknowingly that was causing all of that.
Right. It's good you guys actually got to the bottom of that, right? Because a lot of people, and I know people right now who are suffering and haven't gotten healed, basically. They know it's mold, they know they had mold exposure, but they still are struggling physically because once it gets in your body, it's really, really complicated to cleanse that and detox that. So can you explain your company's mission on how you guys combat mycotoxins in the home?
Absolutely. So Superstratum is our chemical product line. So we make DIY products, so straight to the hands of the consumer, and they can order those products on our website.
Yeah, that's super cool. I checked out your store and I love the products. And you have a balm, you call it the balm, like the deodorizer balm.
Deodor balm. Yeah.
Do you have to leave the
product.
house when that's going on?
Yes. So we have 3 different products, and really they combine into what we call our whole home system. This is the detoxification package that people can do at their own home. So it's really 3 phases. The first phase is you fog our building cleaner. That's the hypochlorous acid that we prove, to break down mycotoxins. That cleaner is incredibly powerful and effective, but it is extremely safe. Your white blood cells actually make that chemical inside your own body. So, we work with the most sensitized clients and customers.
Okay. I was going to ask you that. Yeah. How safe it's not toxic?
No, it breaks down to a salt. And hypochlorous acid, I use that chemical to brush my teeth as deodorant. I gargle it when I get strep throat.
Wow.
What is it? Hypochlorous.
Hypochlorous acid.
Okay.
It's essentially salt and water, and an electrical charge is run through that, and it creates this HOCl molecule, right? And there's lots of different versions to that. They take HOCl and they make disinfectants and like mold killers with it. We took a special type of it to make this mycotoxin cleaning agent. Yeah, so that's the building cleaner. Yep. So you can fog that in your whole home. Like I do that just on a regular basis. I just fog the home. It feels fresh. It freshens the air.
Now, why would you need to leave then? Just because it's foggy and you want to get up?
You don't with that. You don't need any PPE. You can stay right there in the home.
Okay.
So that's the first phase. Then the second phase is our deodor bombs. And the first phase gets on all the places you can see. Then the second phase is all the places you can't see. So you put our little packets, the deodor bomb packets, in all the rooms of the home and add water, and it creates chlorine dioxide gas. And chlorine dioxide gas then penetrates into, gets behind the walls and the stud cavities in some cases, gets into all the soft goods, gets to all those places you can't see, breaks down VOCs, all the odors, all the mycotoxins. It's extremely, extremely powerful. So that second phase, that happens overnight. So you would leave the home, right? Do that overnight.
Now, chlorine dioxide, which isn't chlorine or?
No, it's chlorine dioxide. And that is the end of my chemical. This is when my chemist steps in. We can have that conversation. But but chlorine dioxide, it comes in a liquid form.
Okay.
There are different cleaners and things they use it. But in its gas form, it's very, very powerful. But it is toxic in gas. So that's why you leave the home. You can wear a simple gas mask, when you set them all off to be safe, right? But immediately you set them off and then you leave and then it fills up that home.
Okay.
So when you come back
in a gaseous form, you wouldn't want to inhale it. But once you get back and it's not airborne anymore. Okay.
Totally. The fogging is totally fine. You don't need anything for that. But for the gassing, you do.
Would you only do that if you have mold, or are you saying everyone should do that just in case?
So the system is designed to be done after the mold is gone.
Okay.
If you find mold in your home and a remediator comes in and does their job, either you would want them to do this professionally and do that post-cleaning, mycotoxin cleaning, or you could order the products and do it yourself.
Okay. So I'm guessing you sell to a lot of mold remediators. You sell your product.
We do, but we're focused on the consumer. We kind of skipped that professional industry and went straight to the end user.
Nice. Okay.
And then how long is the duration for that, for the second phase? Is it take 8 hours, 12 hours?
12 hours. Yeah. So overnight, 12 hours.
And then if you have pets, you have to be concerned about what might be captured in the air on the upholstery with them, with their paws.
It's only toxic when it's airborne. So
so
only when it's airborne. Oh, I see.
Both the first phase and the second phase chemicals just leave salt. So you may have a little salt left, but they're biodegradable. So you don't get any toxic chemicals left over.
Okay. And then what's phase 3? Was there a third phase?
So phase 3 is our endurance coating. And this is that original polymer coating technology that we developed when we started the company. It's an interesting story, but essentially the reason that we can't prevent mold is because every product that you use to kill mold or to clean it, or some paints, right, to seal it up, they just, not the paints, but everything else just washes away once they get wet, right? And that's what makes mold grow. So we're just in this cycle of cleaning mold. Well, this product, our endurance coating, when you spray it onto a surface, and you can use it indoors, outdoors, I even put it on my clothes. It will form an invisible coating, a dry film, but you can't really tell it's there, right? It's very, very light. But inside that invisible coating, it has preservatives that aren't typically used in the remediation industry. They've been used in cosmetics and in canned preservatives and things. So very, very, very low amounts are there. And when that coating gets wet, it won't wash away, but any mold or anything that lands on the surface of that coating can't grow. Gotcha. It'll last, if you spray it on your furniture outside, it'll last for a couple of years, on the side of your home or on the sidewalk. If you got algae on a sidewalk, it's a great place to use it. But when you move it inside the house, our professional service division offers a 15-year warranty. but it'll last, we say 10 years on the bottle, but really 25 years when it's in a
Wow.
stud cavity. So it's really that insurance. So if something floods or it gets wet, it could be underwater for 24 hours still, and it won't
Wow.
wash away, and it'll stay on that
Amazing.
surface. Yeah.
How is the third one applied though? Is it
A
Spray.
little pump sprayer. You can spray it in
okay?
a little spray bottle.
Would you advise that around your bathtub for just general mildew?
Oh yeah. It'll last for
Okay.
3 months in your shower.
Mm.
Yeah.
I need a bottle.
Wow.
I need a bottle of that.
Yeah. We'll get you some.
Got mildew. We have mildew on one
So
of the.
I know people are curious, how much does this cost on an average home of 1,500 square feet? These 3 phases. What would
Yeah.
the
So it's
price point?
about $1 a square foot. And that depends on, do you have a crawl space, an attic?
Okay.
Our team, and if they get onto the website, they can certainly talk to our team. We'll have a chat bot, but we've also got a site where they can enter in all the details themselves. So enter all that in. Any questions? I mean, our team is great, but yeah, it really depends. But $1 a square foot is about the price that it kind of averages out to.
Okay. Do you ever have situations where people just focus on a part of their home versus the whole home?
Yeah. So one thing that a lot of customers are doing now is they'll buy enough for one room, and they'll kind of try it in one room, and then, oh, how did it feel? How easy was it? And then they'll move on and do, the rest of the house.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
As we discussed, our listeners are familiar with the dangers of mold and mycotoxins like we discussed. Can you shed light on why mold remediation is often not enough for those sensitive people?
That is a great question. And like we said, when that mold remediator comes in and he's removing that mold, and because that mold has spread those toxins around the house, when you have a sensitized person whose toxin bucket, right, is full, right? Maybe they have a hard time getting them out. So their bucket's full. That sensitivity, and you guys may be familiar with this if you've had it, but it's like a dog's nose. And you can walk into a
Mhm.
place and you know exactly what toxin is in that building,
Yeah.
right? Because your cellular defense response just kicks into action. And that's why mold remediation for some people, it is enough. Ron, it may have been enough for you in that situation where you would have never really realized it, but those toxins that you could get out of your body, maybe it's not for a sensitized person. So we're trying to spread the message of building related illness to say, hey, pay attention to these environments, right?
Mhm.
There's always a root cause. There's always a root
Always.
cause to your
Yeah,
chronic illness,
right.
right? You just
Right.
haven't found it yet.
Yeah, don't just mask those symptoms, guys. If you're listening and you're suffering with something and you're suspecting, get to the root, do the digging and figure it out. Because even if you mask it, you're only temporarily, it is just going to keep rearing its ugly head, as you know, until it comes back. So, and we do have a lot of chemically sensitive people. And you talked about the gene. I want to highlight that a little because listeners
Yeah.
might not be familiar with that. Can you explain how some people have this gene and how it prevents you from properly detoxing?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few genetic mutations that make the problem more difficult for people, but there's one main, and I mentioned it, the MTHFR mutation.
Mhm.
That's one that's gaining a lot of popularity. They're linking it now, to, oh, you're more likely to have autism, you're more likely to get Alzheimer's, to this gene, right? And it's interesting. And from my perspective, Western medicine is starting to see this and starting to put these pieces together. But, what I like to tell people is we think about genetics as kind of a roll of the dice that, oh, I have this gene, and that means I'm more susceptible to getting Alzheimer's, right? I
Right,
hope I don't
right.
get it. Well, that is a flawed view because our genes make us more susceptible in a particular environment. Okay, I can't methylate properly. I'm more susceptible to Alzheimer's, or a child to autism or to autoimmune disease because I have this gene, not because it's random, but because that means when I'm exposed to toxicity, it's harder for me to get it out, and which means that I'm going to experience the diseases that come from having a toxic body. Well, if you're aware of that, if you know how to take care of yourself, if you know how to take care of your environment, you may actually have a far lower chance of experiencing any of these diseases than someone who doesn't have that mutation, right? If you're empowered in that way. So it's
Right.
important.
You're going to notice the chemical toxic exposure sooner too than someone who doesn't have it because you're going to be affected. Yeah.
Well, exactly. And you're going to take care of your environment because you know how important that is. You're going to watch your diet. You're going to do all these things that will take care and detoxify your body.
Yeah. Which is a good segue into the next question. So chronic illness is at an all-time high today. I know kids have like 50% of kids today have chronic illness. And these diseases are rising. It's crazy. So how does healing our homes also help us heal our bodies?
That's a great question. There's a stat that's incredible, right? That it's that high today.
Yeah.
But in 1958, there was only 5% of the population that had a chronic illness or an allergy.
Right. It used to be like even autism now is 1 in 36 boys. 1 in 36 boys, breast cancer is 1 in 8 women. And these numbers never were even close to that years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah.
It's happening so fast now. I mean, that rise from 5% to 50% is just astronomical. But the rise, even in the last 10 years, 15 and 20 years, it's incredible. It really
It
is.
is. Yeah.
And I truly believe that the driving factor of that is the environments that we live in. Everything is poisoning us. There's toxins everywhere in our life, right? But this issue of building related illness, the government says that half of all buildings in the United States have ongoing water damage, which my home in Los Angeles, those are the conditions that create these toxic buildings. So in those homes, you have 170 million people who are being exposed. And if the numbers that people widely quote are right, that 40% of people have these types of mutations in their genes, then you've got 67 million people right now living in homes, experiencing chronic illness and disease, not understanding where it's coming from, right? And that begins the process and the cycle of going to the doctor and, oh, the labs look fine. Or, oh, here's some SSRIs or some antidepressants or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever it is. Or I get
I
sick
got offered antidepressants when
Oh, yeah.
I'm going through my thing. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not depressed. Like, what does this have to do with like fixing the
Yeah.
issue here? And I know, I mean, I've talked to so many people on the same boat. You can't even like show emotion. They're like, oh, you must be depressed. Right.
Yeah, well, it's why focusing on the environment is so important because your psychiatrist, your doctor, they don't know the environment that you live in. And they're not trained to recognize those root causes that are in your environment, right? So, one of the things I like to say, and I learned this from a doctor, is that we have all these diseases now and we can make drugs for all of them. And right,
Oh,
it's a
yeah.
really nice business model.
Magical.
But 100 years ago, we didn't have that. We had toxicity, right? And toxicity, all toxicity comes from the environment. And that could be a mycotoxin or a mold, or it could be an emotional toxin, right? It could be someone who's abusive. A toxin creates a deficiency. Well, now a child who has an abusive father is not getting the love that it needs. The cell is robbed of its nutrients and what it needs. So that deficiency that the toxin creates from the environment creates an adaptation. The cell then changes its behavior to survive. The child develops his personality, right, to deal with the home and the father. Well, as the cell grows, if it can't get out of the toxic environment or get away from the toxin, then when it reproduces, it creates a mutation. And now that toxicity has created a morphogenetic memory in the DNA. And that is how things get passed down generation to
Right.
generation. And it's why your liver reproduces itself, every 8 weeks or whatever they say. It's because those cells are regenerating cells that have the memory of it, the adaptation from the toxin. And the mutation is what causes the symptoms of our disease. The symptom is the signal, right, back to the environment to say, wait, something's wrong. And it can be a code, right, to decode that all the way back. But when you have the right information, which for some people, it's like, oh, wait, that leak last year could mean my kid can't read correctly.
Yeah.
Or my husband is depressed, or he gained 15 pounds out of, we can't control our weight, or my psoriasis, or my gut issues, or, that's
Hormonal.
really
Yeah.
hormonal, all of it, on and on and on. You guys know, it's really being empowered in that.
It is. There's a well-known study, multiple that show that 90 to 95% of cancers are environment and lifestyle. And I say this so much on the show, people are probably sick of me spewing out that stat. But when I first started telling people, like, that's not true, that's not true, like the cognitive dissonance, because people have been so programmed to think if your relative had cancer, you're going to get cancer, and not really realizing you have so much power. It's actually your choice, your environment, and your lifestyle. That's the biggest factor in that, not genetics.
Absolutely. And so many times too, I would see people and they would both get MS at the same time or both get cancers at the same time. And, you kind of just, sometimes the most obvious thing is the truth, right? That you're all getting the same diseases and all being sick together, either the same or differently because you're in an environment that's creating that. And I completely believe that.
Yeah. And like the cancer clusters, I mean, there's a thing called cancer clusters. They've studied areas like, whoa, there's a really high, Marin County, I think, was a cancer cluster of I think it was breast cancer, where they found there's a really high level of breast cancer in this area. And that could be from, well, obviously the environment. There's something going on. Is it chemicals being dumped into rivers, or this, or chemical plants, or this or that? We don't know. But cancer clusters are real. And it only makes sense, like you said, people getting sick together at the same time would be such a strong indicator that your environment is unhealthy, right?
Absolutely.
Take a look at your environment. Yeah. And we aren't brought up to think about our environment at all. I know Ron and I are biobiologists now, but when we started this, I never thought about it. I didn't think about my home having toxic chemicals, because you can't see them. All of the stuff that we're talking about. You could see mold. Let's say that's like the only thing I think we've discussed that you can actually visibly see. And a lot of times you can't even see it, right? It might be hiding.
Yeah. Well, and mycotoxins are odorless and invisible. So there have been cases where, I've seen people in extreme colitis or extreme depression, suicidal. And I've literally walked into the house and looked down at the floorboards and gone, that's why you're trying to kill yourself, because there's moisture in your crawl space and mold's growing and all the floorboards are cupped after the years of moisture. And the stack effect is pushing that air up into the house. You can't smell it, but it's toxic from the mycotoxins.
Right.
And it got into the brain. Right. These are things that are much, much more common than people think.
It's crazy. We're going to be talking about the detox protocols coming up, for the body anyway. I know you're dealing with the building envelope, but how to detox from the body, because I'm sure this is a cliffhanger I'm leaving listeners with. How do I detox? Good news, guys. There is a way. There is a way. There's hope.
There are solutions.
Yeah. So, wow, this has been really enlightening. And I just can't thank you enough for doing the work that you're doing. When your publicist reached out, I was like, whoa, I've never heard of this product. We have to have him on. This is so incredible that you're offering a solution like this. I haven't heard of anyone doing this. So,
well, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much. You guys, you can learn more about Seth and his work at Hygia. That's HYGIA.life. And even good mold remediation can leave behind mycotoxins, as we talked about. Seth offers affordable, do-it-yourself tools to destroy mycotoxins throughout your entire home. Visit Superstratum. I have to say it like that, like it's a superpower.
Right.
Superstratum. That's SuperStratum.co to learn more. Invisible mycotoxins in your home could be the reason behind your health issues, guys. Be sure to take their quiz while you're there also.
And guys, please be sure to review our show. 5 stars. 5 stars are always appreciated, because if you want to hear amazing guests like Seth, 5 stars is needed for that. We can take to the next level. Seth is such an amazing guest. Thank you for being here, Seth. And also make sure to head over to thehealthyhomehacks.com for all the links and the show notes. And until next time, thanks everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
This episode of the Healthy Home Hacks podcast has ended, but be sure to subscribe for more healthy living strategies and tactics to help you create the healthy home you've always dreamed of. And don't forget to rate and review so we can continue to bring you the best content. See you on the next episode.